Hi everyone, Christina here. Welcome to day 22 of the holiday card series for 2021. Welcome, welcome. Today's card is actually a lot about blending. I'm going to blend three colors together that generally I wouldn't blend together. I wanted to blend a red shade to a green shade, but those don't really mix very well. A few weeks ago for a Concord and Ninth online virtual event, I ended up creating a card where I blended kind of red to green, and where they overlapped, it almost made like a purpley blue color. So I decided I would go ahead and try the same thing for a holiday card series card. And instead of just having it kind of mix in the middle, I would go ahead and put in a navy blue so that it has like the red can blend to blue and the green can blend to blue. So it turned out really, really well. It looks a little bit like a traditional Christmas color combination, but then also not. It's a little bit unique, but it's a fun way to put together some fun ink blending. So let's get into it.
Okay, buckle in. I'm doing a lot of ink blending for this card today. I've become a little bit of, I don't know, an ink blending snob. When it comes to my ink blending, anyway, I really am particular about the ink blending and I want to make sure that it's as seamless as possible. So I'm starting out with the color Cranberry from Concord and Ninth, and I'm using a Honeybee blender brush for this. And I've brought that red pretty far down onto my cardstock. And now I'm using the color Midnight, and I'm going to have Midnight be right where the red is fading to white. So this blue color is going to go down the center of the card. Now, this cardstock is just some regular Neenah Classic Crest Solar White 80-pound cardstock, and it is cut to an A2 card size. So this entire blending piece will be going on the front of my card. After I had that midnight color blended all the way down, I then brought in Clover. And I have a little bit of Post-it tape protecting my fingertips because I am applying a lot of ink, and that ink does kind of pick up on my fingers. So I'm just blending as much as I can with that Clover color, really saturating that cardstock. And after I'm done with the Clover color, I'm going to put it away and I'm going to go in reverse order. And I'm going to go back to Midnight and start blending at that transition to the green and also to the red. I'm mostly just wanting to get a much more saturated area of the blue shade. If you notice, you can still sort of see little speckles of the white cardstock kind of glowing through the paper or through the ink. What you want is you want pure color. You don't want any of that white. So there was still quite a bit of white left on the red and also on the blue. So I went back and forth between those two colors, just trying to get a better blend. And in the end, I think it turned out really, really well. You get sort of this purple color in the transition. I think it's really, really pretty. So I'm going to set this aside for a little bit while I do some die cutting with the dies in the Christmas Holidays Stamp and Cut set from Hero Arts. You actually get these 4 dies plus the stamp set. And I'm not going to use the outer portion of the Merry Christmas. I'm only going to use the words today. And I'm going to die cut the words out of some gold cardstock from Lawn Fawn. This is one of their metallic cardstocks, and it cuts like a dream. It's beautiful, a beautiful cardstock. So I've cut down a piece of the gold cardstock, and I'm just going to run that through my die cutting machine, and then I can kind of see where the words are on the card and make some decisions on what else to put on the front of the card. So I'm going to place this over the top. It's going to go right over that transition from the green to blue. And I decided I would add additional gold die cuts. I'm going to use the Dancing Snowflakes die from Simon. And I actually cut this die out 3 times because I wanted to have these snowflakes kind of nestled around the words. And so it just needed 3 die cuts to do that. I figured 3 covers most of it, but I'm going to be cutting off the excess that's hanging off the edge of the card, and I can use those leftovers to fill in the gaps. So I'm going to stamp a secondary die cut below the Merry Christmas. So before I do that, and since I'm going to be heat embossing it, I want to do a test run with the embossing powder only to make sure that my cardstock with all the ink blending is perfectly dry. So I dried that with the heat tool, used my powder tool on it, and then put some embossing powder on. And as you can see, it was not completely dry. So I'm glad I tested it. And after brushing off that embossing powder, I heat set it again. I just tried to speed up the drying process. There's a lot of ink on this cardstock, so it took a while. I then tested it again, and you can see this time that the cardstock or the powder slides right off the cardstock, so I knew it was ready for my stamping. I'm going to be using a grid transparency sheet to help me get the line of text on there perfectly straight. And it also gives me some guidelines for the center of the card so I can get that greeting centered as well. I had the Merry Christmas die cut on there just long enough to get the position for the stamp. I transferred the stamp to the door of my MISTI and then peeled away that grid transparency sheet. Prepping the area with an anti-static powder tool, and then inking up that sentiment stamp with a Versamark ink. And I'll stamp that down onto my ink blended panel. I then took the panel and sprinkled on that white embossing powder. This is the color Alabaster from Brutus Monroe. So I sprinkled that on, made sure I had all areas of the greeting covered, and then I used my heat tool to melt the embossing powder. Okay, so now I'm going to be putting the ink blended panel onto my card base and then assembling all these die cuts on the front of my card. So I'm using some Honeybee Precision Glue for this, just using little dots of glue on the back of the gold foil die cuts, and then using my tweezers to help me adhere it to my card front. I used a T-square ruler to make sure I got it on here straight. And just as soon as I have a few areas kind of pressed down, I can remove that ruler and press down the rest. So when it comes to the snowflakes, this was actually a very time-consuming process. I think just in adhering snowflakes to the front of this card, I probably spent about 15 to 20 minutes. Oh, and I did want to tell you that all that ink blending that I did, it took about 15 minutes because I was very particular about getting the blend just right. So I adhered each one of these die cuts to the top of my card. I only put adhesive on that larger snowflake on the second piece because I knew most of that die cut would be hanging off the edge. But for the first one, I had adhesive everywhere. So when I go to cut off the extra that's hanging off the end, there will be adhesive on some pieces. There was this tiny little snowflake that I thought would fill in that gap right in the center. And then I took my scissors and I turned over my project and just ran my scissors along the edge to cut off any of the excess. And you can see that there's actually quite a bit of the snowflake imagery that I can use for other areas of the card. So while this finished card has tons of snowflake die cuts on it, I really only die cut that die 3 times. So I'm going to cut off the excess on the other side as well. And then I just started filling in the gaps with that third die cut and any of the extras that were left. And I ended with this little tiny die cut on the side, and everything was adhered. I actually had even more pieces left over that I could have used. So that finishes all the die cutting. Now there are some areas of the die cut that were kind of pulling up. They didn't have adhesive behind them. So what you can do is take a little scrap of paper. I'm just using one of the interior pieces that were cut out from the die cutting. And you put adhesive on it and then just slide that underneath the die cut. And it adds adhesive just to the back of those areas that are lifting. So that is the card for today, day 22. So crazy, we're already at day 22.
I love how that card turned out. I love all the gold accents, and I like that there's that white pop of that secondary greeting. I think it turned out super, super well. For today's holiday question, I'm going to be asking you about Christmas tree ornaments and what is your favorite ornament on your tree currently, or maybe your favorite ornament is one that you might not have anymore. Tell me about that ornament and maybe why you don't have it anymore. My favorite happens to be one that was missing for a number of years, and then we found it last year. So when I was a little girl, we had a cat who was pure white. She was all white. Her name was Sasha. And I think it was the year we got her, or maybe the year after, my mother found a Christmas ornament of a white cat sitting on a pink pillow. And it was not enamel, but like ceramic. It was ceramic, and it was beautiful. And, actually this must have been many years after we got Sasha, because I remember the year we got this ornament, I was in an art class in junior high. It was 7th grade, so I was probably 12 at the time, maybe 13. And we had to draw something in our house. And I decided to draw this Christmas ornament of the cat on the pillow. And the whole idea behind the drawing was you had to make it a line drawing and never pick your pencil up from the paper. And you couldn't look at the paper. You were like staring at it and you're drawing, like this. It was one of those type of exercises. And I drew this ornament, and I've loved it ever since. So years ago, when my mother moved away from my childhood home, she packed away all the ornaments, and we just didn't see them for years. And last year we unpacked a box when we were getting ready to move to this new house. And we opened a box, and there were all the ornaments from when we were kids. I feel really grateful that my mother lives with us, because our Christmas tree is her Christmas tree. So we get to have all of those ornaments on our tree. It's kind of a really fun tradition. I love that ornament. So let me know down in the comments, what is your favorite Christmas tree ornament? Does it have a memory attached, or do you just love it because it's beautiful? Let me know in the comments. I'll be back on Wednesday with day 23 of the holiday card series. It will be my last live holiday card series video for this year. So come back on Wednesday at 6 p.m. Mountain Time and join me. We're going to be making a really fun card for day 23. Thanks for watching today, and I'll see you guys on Wednesday.